Top countries drowning in national debt 2021. Having national debt does not mean a country is unstable or is poor. A lot of economic powers have national debt. In fact, some of the world's biggest economic powers have a lot of it. However, there is a line between a healthy and an unhealthy national debt. In 2010, the World Bank published a study that revealed that 77% of debt to GDP ratio was the tipping point for developed countries and 64% ratio for emerging markets. Countries that stayed above this threshold for long periods saw significant slowdowns in economic growth. Countries with economies smaller than $10 billion GDP are not included, and figures are based on gross debt. All dollars amounts are US dollars. Before we begin, please like the video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on the notification to get updates on new content. Number 10, the United Kingdom, 98.1% of GDP. Since 2008, debt in the UK has been an increase as a result of financial crash and global recession. This happened despite money-saving austerity measures put in place by the government. The UK economy is in flux as a result of the coronavirus pandemic and ever-changing lockdown measures. And while the country left the European Union on the 1st of January 2021 with a deal, further financial instability is set to impact the nation as it adapts. Currently, the UK's national debt is estimated to be $2.9 trillion. Number 9, Zambia, 99.7% of GDP. Zambia is characterized by poor economic measures and alleged corruption. China and Chinese institutions have given out loans to the country, which equals $3 billion, making up a quarter of its foreign debt. The COVID-19 pandemic has also brought the country's copper production to a standstill. Its borrowing habits were exposed as unstable. Zambia has been able to defer some of its debt's payments because of the havoc caused by the coronavirus outbreak. But as its debt currently stands at 405.7 billion Zambian kwakas, the equivalent of $19.1 billion, the country is on the brink of a debt crisis. Number 8, Belgium, 103.8% of GDP. As a result of the 2008 financial crisis, Belgium, like other countries, had no other option but to borrow from some of Europe's major banks. The Belgian economy was plunged back into a crisis in 2020 thanks to the coronavirus pandemic, and last year was the first time the country's debt exceeded $611 billion. Its national debt is currently estimated at $630 billion, which is 103.8% of GDP. Number 7, United States, 106.7% of GDP. Before the outbreak of COVID-19, the United States was enjoying its longest economic expansion on record, and the impact of the Great Recession between 2007 and 2009 was all but eradicated by 2014, following the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. This changed the narrative, and the country recorded its steepest ever quarterly drop in economic output between April and June, according to the Bureau of Economic Analysis. The country's debt also saw an increase in 2019, that is 84% of its GDP. It was estimated at 106.7%, which is equivalent to a staggering $24.2 trillion. Number 6, Spain, 106.9% of GDP. Since 2009, the European Union has been keeping tabs on Spain's economy to ensure it manages its budget responsibly. Spain successfully freed itself from the program in 2020 by reducing its deficit. Although Spain has debt that is equal to 1.4 trillion US dollars, the country has marked its fifth year of recovery. As well as other countries, Spain has also been affected by the coronavirus pandemic. Its spending increased significantly, and the country's debt rose to a new record high in June. As of October 2020, Spain had incurred debt worth 1.6 trillion US dollars, which is equivalent to 106.9% of GDP. Number 5, France, 110% of GDP. When French President Emmanuel Macron decided to increase national spending as a response to the Gilets jaunes protest that concerned high taxes and low living standards, France's national debt has been on the rise. This has soon become a mountain that has been made worse by the coronavirus pandemic. The move puts France among the top 3 European countries in terms of gross debt, which is 3.2 trillion US dollars, which is 110% of GDP. Number 4, Portugal, 130.2% of GDP. The European Union had to bail out Portugal during the country's long-standing financial crisis in 2011, but the cash injection prompted its economy to grow at its fastest rate in 20 years in the following decade. In the year 2019, the country has been making strong comebacks and has been able to announce its first budget surplus after 45 years. However, Portugal still had high public debts of 111% of GDP that year. As a country heavily dependent on touristic industry, Portugal's economy has been adversely affected by the coronavirus, and by October 2020, its GDP was 5.8% lower than at the same time in 2019. The national debt has also grown to an estimated of 130.2% of GDP in 2020. That's the equivalent of 323 billion US dollars. Number 3, Italy, 148.8% of GDP. Over the past decades, Italy has had poor economic performance, which has resulted in limited growth and scant resources to deal with the challenges it faces. Italy was the epicenter of Europe's initial coronavirus outbreak, and the country has seen its economy thrown into its worst recession since World War I as a result. As of 2020, Italy's gross public debt was estimated to an enormous 148.8% of GDP, that is 3.2 trillion US dollars. This figure is also set to grow as the country will receive a total of 254 billion US dollars in loans and grants from the European Union's Recovery Fund over the next 3 years. Number 2, Lebanon, 164.2% of GDP. Following the 1975 to 1990 civil war, Lebanon accumulated an abundance of its debt. The government has been blamed for mismanagement of funds and amassing of wealth by individuals over the benefit of the country. The country was in a vicious cycle of debt, with the government spending half of its revenues just on paying off interest from loans. Its financial situation was made worse with the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic and also the devastating explosion in the Beirut in August, which killed more than 200 people and caused more than 15 billion US dollars worth of the country's infrastructure. Needless to say, Lebanon finds itself in a deep economic crisis, with a national debt at the total of 105.9 billion US dollars, or 167.2% of GDP. Number 1, Japan, 177% of GDP. Japan has the highest debt to GDP ratio in the world at 177% of GDP. In the late 1980s, Japan's real estate and stock markets prices were hugely inflated, and the resultant economic bubble burst in 1992, leading to a period of financial stagnation known as the Lost Decade. Since then, the country has grown to be one of the top economies in the world, But with the global financial crisis and several domestic catastrophes, including the 2011 earthquake and tsunami, which was the globe's most expensive natural disaster, causing almost $325 billion worth of damage, it has had little opportunities to squash its debt. Along with other Asian economies, Japan has led the so-called Zoom boom as it economically quickly bounced back from recession caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, with 5% of its growth in the third quarter of 2020. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like and share with your friends. Also subscribe to our channel and turn on your notification to get alert when we release new content. Check out our page for other interesting content.